I want to be able to quickly identify really phenomenal characteristics in an individual that'll almost guarantee that I'm hiring a great person.
The idea, again, is to know, this is the goal, to know them as clearly as you can, given limitations. Okay, what did we learn in that? Well, in creating the profile, it really helped make it concrete more of what we're looking for. Now we're not just looking for someone to fill a job description. This is a real key one, is to give them scenarios in the setting to see how they respond. And recognizing that every person is like a diamond with many facets. As far as competence, one of the things to look at in measuring it is outcomes, not just process. And a position, according to these studies that I've read, says ideally that the job you have, 80% of what you're doing, you're good at.
All right, Tom.
Andrew?
We're in the new space.
We are in it's a new space project.
It's a new space program. We upgraded.
Right. In fact, I would venture to say that we may actually be space cadets.
On a new mission.
On a new mission.
With this podcast.
With this podcast. This may take you places you've never been before.
That's right, unexplored territory.
And I would even suggest you never want to go there again.
Yeah, we might go there once and then that's it.
If our listeners have courage, I think they
might learn a thing or two.
Might learn a lot from Andrew on how he can learn from me.
That's right.
How I can learn from you.
That's right. That's right.
So with that said, I think we close in prayer.
Yeah, that's right. We're done. Episode's over. No, I'm excited. I'm excited about the new space, but I'm excited about the episode topic. I want to talk today about what are the ideal characteristics of a great team hire. Mm-hmm. I feel like in specifically where I'm at with the company that I'm with, but even beyond that, I'm talking to a lot of people where they're growing and they're hiring.
And they're growing and they're hiring.
They're growing and they're hiring.
So they're in process.
And they're in process. And it takes a lot of time.
Yeah.
It takes a lot of time. If you don't have like a dedicated team to just recruit, if you're the manager, you're just or leader of the department, you're so involved in that process.
Yeah.
And it takes a significant amount of time. And so as you're going through it, it's like, what are you even looking for? You go through hundreds, and there's tons of people looking for a job.
Right.
So actually, this goes both ways. I think the first one is, as someone looking to hire great people, what should I be looking for?
Yeah.
And if I'm looking for a job, how can I be the great ideal candidate for the person that's recruiting?
Right.
I think it goes both ways. But I think for me, I want to be able to quickly identify really phenomenal characteristics in an individual that'll almost guarantee that I'm hiring a great person.
Yeah.
How do I do that?
Well, that's a good question and very challenging. Not the question, but the reality.
Yeah.
For me, what comes to mind, and by the way, I think this is just something that, as we talk about, that it'd be good to remind people, if you're new to this podcast, that the format of this is I have no idea what Andrew's going to ask me.
Yeah.
And I love that. I mean, and so, because a part of the idea of this podcast is to tap into whatever sort of in me.
Yes.
Not having like a generic 4 things that, even though you said what are 4 things, but it's really, one of the reasons I like it is it causes me to think about stuff. Like most of us, our brains are moving pretty fast. And so just this is an aside that one thing that we need to do in anything we're doing, but particularly when it comes to what I think we generally would say subjective. So when you think about hiring, and I would, comes to mind as a potential sort of metaphor or similarity, and that is dating. I've been married 51 years, so my dating life is really cut short. But when you think about when you first meet a man or a woman, and one of the things, these are just kind of pieces, but one of the things you're interested in initially is are you interested in me, or are you just interested in what I represent? So there's the personal side. Now, you don't, in a dating environment, depending on if you're at a bar or if you just met somebody at a party or somebody set you up or whatever, I think what really makes the thing have a chance is when it's geared, as much intuition that we have. And a lot of times I think people don't realize how powerful our intuition is. I mean, in other words, the sort of cognitive, which I've talked before, it's not anti-cognitive.
Yeah.
But so then that it starts with, do you have a clear picture as the hirer? We'll speak from that side first, of what you are looking for. And, in reality, that's a work in progress, because you'd say, well, I have this new position, or that's even more challenging in some ways. But if you say, I already have a position, and we had this person in it, and like I think of companies like yours that have gone through, and particularly when you're growing, it adds to the challenge, because so you say, we've had this person in this role, but that role itself is a work in progress. Yeah. It's not like, and so, by the way, I think parenthetically, one of the things that I'm a big believer in is to beware of the job description. Because a job description is the only time you ever look at a job description is when you're getting interviewed for a job, or you're leaving. Because no one goes, okay, I've got this new job, and it's 10% of my time I spend on activities, and so I'm only doing 8%. Right. So it's not saying the job description isn't helpful, but it's at a different point. On the front end, I think what you're trying to touch base is, who is this person? What makes this person tick? Because ultimately, that's where, particularly when we're talking about a team, how do you recruit or how are you ready to be a person on a team? So you think, I, as you know, defer a lot to sports analogies, and this is a good one, but when you're talking about drafting somebody, it's a dialogue. In the NFL, you draft somebody, but just because you draft them doesn't mean that they even end up playing for you. In other words, they most of the time they negotiate, or they're
right.
So, but what is it that you notice about them? What do you like about them? But that's relative to what you are looking for. So one of the hiring processes that I use and have encouraged over the years, it's a contrast, and both of them are legitimate at different times. And one is the runway method, which is what I call it, and that is, it's like in a beauty pageant. You have them go down the runway, and you look at that one, and you look at that one, and you go through, and you may say, let's go another time through. So you're just kind of looking at everybody compared to everybody.
What are you looking for?
So what I suggest that is, there's a sense in which when you have a lot of people you have to do that you have the runway, but you don't want to, in my opinion, you don't want to make the decisions based on the runway because you're processing several different people.
It's so quick.
And it's coming quick and something will jump out, or she was tall or he was short. So what I call is more of the profile. Start in this way. So as you make an initial maybe 4 or 5 characteristics that you're looking for. Well, you say they need to speak a foreign language. Some of the rudimentary things they need to have. Worked with in something similar for X amount of years. Kind of just a general. But then even within that, then what I suggest is if you in the process, and it's a team process. By the way, that's a key thing too. The idea of a team hiring a team person. That's we'll put that over here for a second.
Yeah, that's super important. And a lot of companies I don't think operate that way at all.
Well, the more typical kind of corporate thing is an HR person.
Yes.
Does the hiring.
Yes.
Which when you think, so that's another issue. Who should be doing the interviewing?
Right.
And who should? But back to the so the profile.
Yep.
So you'd say, okay, here's the characteristics. Then I would say, and I've been in all sides of that, but I would say to our team, does anyone come to mind that fits what this guy or this gal is talking about? And it's been very helpful and generally successful. Instead of going, let's go another round on the runway. Okay, and now we've narrowed it down to 4. Let's go another one. Now we narrow it. Okay, that may be a tool to help identify. But if you come back here, so like I think of when we hired an associate pastor. His job was a new position, and his job was to basically grow and nurture the existing staff. And we had at that time 35 on staff. And so we looked at what we're looking for. We want someone who is good at this, and this, and came up with a pretty good portrait. It's sort of like in the police file stuff, you've probably seen them where they don't have any picture of the guy, but they bring in an artist and
they do the sketch.
And they do a sketch, and then you go, that looks a lot like my boss. Have you thought about arresting him?
Yeah.
But that you come up with a profile. So in this case, as we went around, I think we had 5 in that team of looking at the whole thing. You don't want to have too many. That's another thing. I mean, you want to have strategic people, and you got to know why they're there. This is another subject we'll hit on one of these days, and that is the art and practice of meetings. A meeting, in my opinion, should be the highlight of people's week.
Yeah.
It's usually the exact opposite.
Yes.
Okay, and there's reasons for that and the way to do it.
We're going
to I'm putting that on the list. We got a big pile coming up
that's on our list that we'll talk about.
A lot of things people say is just a pile anyway. So
we'll dig through it. We'll find the nuggets.
We'll go through that. Yeah. But so back to the portrait. So this particular case, there were 3 or 4 people that said, who's that's like is Joe Doe. And everyone's, come to think of it, that's a lot of what we're looking for is what he's like that. Okay. So then you identify it. And then, so I went to this guy because I also knew him and I tended to agree. And I kind of profiled and said, would you even be interested in something like that?
Right.
And so it was a give and take. And the first answer, and this is very common amongst good candidates, is they're either got a lot of experience in something or they're relatively happy in what they're doing, and you're kind of recruiting them out of that. Not always. I mean, sometimes for various reasons. But in this case, he said, I don't. Doesn't fit me right now in my life. So we'll go back to the team. Says that he's the guy, but he didn't want to. He's not available. Okay, so let's put his portrait over here, and so you kind of get into a new runway.
Yeah,
you're having a
right.
runway of portraits, and doing the portrait thing is actually very helpful in a couple of ways. It ultimately helps you identify, I think, a good candidate and somebody. And a candidate, the jump between being a candidate and a hire is kind of what we're talking about.
Yeah, totally. Yep.
Because you can get candidates, but the hire part is where you actually, you get down to the whatever.
Yeah.
And so now you could put that portrait over here, and then you just by necessity you come back. So, okay, but just doing that by itself is a good team exercise.
Yeah.
And so that's a thing about teams, which we've talked about. But we ought to be continually, just like in anything, getting better at it. Typically we don't because we're not intentional about it. We just try this and then we end up hiring the guy or the gal.
Totally.
But no one's really learned anything about, so let's just say this is a kind of a prototype and we learned. So we'd go, okay, what did we learn in that? Well, in creating the profile, it really helped make it concrete more of what we're looking for. Now we're not just looking for someone to fill a job description. We're looking for, like in sports, again, they'll call a really good candidate that separates them from others is they have the it.
The it factor.
And all that it is really, it's intangible, typically. But this is where a new thing kind of comes in. And that is not just their experience, which is obviously a part of it.
Sure. Yep.
And then some of it, but then this is a real key one is to give them scenarios in the setting to see how they respond. So let's say a part of the job that you're thinking is the ability to make contact with a customer.
Yeah.
But customers we know in this segment are very difficult. So here's the scenario. You come to the job, you're working on this guy as a sale, and the guy is very standoffish or he's very contrarian, and yet you have this sense that he's the right guy. What would you do? So again, it's sort of like what you do with me here. I mean, you don't want someone that you give the questions to, go and prepare them, and then come back and read them.
Yeah, you want the real deal live.
So you want to create. So here's another thing that I've learned through Patrick Lencioni's book, the four, not the team one, but his four characteristics of an excellent CEO.
Yeah.
And one of the things was in hiring, all of and particularly when you're concerned about the values and the all of that, the culture, is that he does all of the hiring and the final hiring, and then he does the onboarding.
Oh, interesting.
And that's what the two things. So you have the HR does their thing, they do all this, and basically they start with the head guy, and that could be departmental too. It doesn't have to be just, but that works if the departmental is that cascading that's actually, it's like the CEO or like the owner. So it's not just that position. So then and one of the things he does practically, he talks about, is he does it off-site. They go to some place, we go to a bowling alley, or you go play golf.
Interesting.
Or you do this, and his whole rationale is, you find out what people are really thinking, not just if it's sitting like in here.
It's more
and we
relaxed.
and it taps. It's harder to disguise.
Yeah, yeah.
So I have a paradigm of my own like that. Whether you can do the exact thing or not depends on a lot of variables. But the basic thing that I look at, and I really believe, and again, coming from a sports standpoint, which I'm kind of, locked in there. But if you want to find out about somebody, both as a team and having integrity, you go play basketball with them. Now, not everybody plays, so that's going to limit, But the reason, and I've seen it because I play and I love basketball, and I played them all my life and coached and all that. But you find out how someone plays on a team, and I'm talking pickup, you don't have to go play for the Lakers or something. But, do they pass the ball? Are they looking for somebody else? And you can see it. I played for years, every noon at the athletic club. And there are guys in there that I didn't want at all to be around.
Right.
And no one liked them except for they're really good. But they would take the ball, and if you're looking strictly at performance, because the way the thing was set up is you had to, whoever won got to stay on the court, and then the next one's waiting.
Yep.
So you couldn't stand this guy because he's a jerk, and he also never passed, so you would never even get the ball. And you have to watch your own ulterior motives. He hit all his shots, so you had to guarantee you're going to keep playing.
Yeah, right.
Okay, but whether that is, you can just tell watching somebody, like if you follow Joker with the Nuggets, which you may or may not, but he's transformed the game because of the way he plays as he distributes the ball.
His passing is
unreal. And as a result, the team is great. So first thing is having some kind of a scenario that actually sees him in action. So it could be, we could go bowling.
Sure.
And see how does he react when he throws it in the gutter, or if he's shooting for 300 and he falls. Well, those are scenarios. Okay, so that's one scenario about team. Another scenario that's equally important is integrity. And how do you do it? You don't ask the guy, well, are you prone to lie a lot?
Yeah, right.
Or,
how do you find that out?
And that's where golf comes in.
Okay.
For me, and again, I love playing golf, and it's a great game. Not everybody plays it, but some equivalent. But the thing about it is it's an honor system. And
sure.
And if you're paying attention, so like during the thing, if I'm keeping score, say, and I ask for everybody's score, and so the guy says I got a 6. I watched him, and he didn't get a 6.
Right.
Now, if you set it up in the first place saying we don't care what the score is and so on, that's fine. But the normal game, or you see him, fudging on, you're in a bad place and they call it a foot wedge. You walk
just kick
by,
it a little bit. Yeah. Get out of the
some
rough
guys
little,
are even more sophisticated where they keep a couple balls in their pocket and just kind of. Okay, but you pay attention to that. Is the guy, and it's not like you're judging him because we all have stuff, but scenario again. Here's a scenario that whatever you can do that will test the integrity. There are more formal ways of doing it that I don't like because it feels like you're in a Nazi training or concentration camp. They're trying to turn the lights up. I haven't been in one of those, by the way.
Yeah, okay.
But I'm
Thanks for
guessing, you probably ought to know that. But I do have an interesting story that in my own life, I was in a fraternity at CU Boulder, and in order to become the member, you were a pledge, which was sort of, that's what they called it when you first sign up.
Gotcha.
And then you go through a semester, and then you can become an active.
Okay.
But in order to become an active, they have a thing they call Hell Week.
Oh,
And
just hazing.
It's hazing
Yeah.
on steroids. And and you're put into that. So at the end of a week, and it's horrible stuff you never do to anybody.
Yeah.
The whole week, and it's crazy, and guys are psychotic, of which I was one. But you're in the order based on your grade point. So you're all done, and you're at the end of this. But you're down in the basement, and they got guys yelling at you, and you have to do push-ups.
Okay.
And after a while, no matter how you're exhausted.
Yeah.
Then they do other stuff. So it's just the idea is to deprive your
Right.
brain.
Right.
It's like a torture. So at the end of it, then you finally are done. And in my case, since I had the lowest grade point, I was the last guy. And so then they say, "Get up, get out of there, come on up here." Now, and you have to go up 4 flights of stairs to this room. And, you're wondering, and all the actives that you knew and stuff, they're yelling at you, "You idiot, I can't believe you." And it's emotionally, it's emotional abuse. It's,
Yeah.
so then you go into this room, and the part, and there's these older guys there's like 3 or 4 of them sitting there with lights, kind of like an interrogation thing.
Interrogation.
And they have a stack of tests. Earlier in the day, we had to take a test about all the facts about our fraternity.
Yeah.
They were really obscure, going back 100 years, and
Wow. Okay.
and there are 30 of us in the thing, and no one knew any of them.
Yeah. Right.
But the thing was, if you don't pass it, you can't be in the thing. So integrity test. Well, we all cheated. We all looked up something, and sitting over on the corner was the answer book, and because we're thinking, who cares? And we went, all right. So now I'm in front of these guys, and they turn over the top thing, and it's my test score. And they ask me, "Did you cheat on this?" And it's interesting because I was a brand new Christian at the time, and I came out of a real crazy background, and it was really honestly a moment with my relationship with the Lord, because it was kind of like I'm saying, "Do I lie here?" And so I said, "No, I did," and I genuinely felt bad, and I thought I've let all the guys down, and so then they said, "Well, here's the thing. Because of that, you can either go through another week or another day, actually, with this guy that was the drill instructor, which is just horrible, or you can get out of here and never come back, because we don't want your kind around here."
Wow.
So taking the emotional abuse to a new level.
Oh my goodness.
And but so then I come out of that, and they push me down the hall, and then they throw me in the shower, and they have cold water coming out of the faucet, and I have to sing the song for our fraternity.
Yeah.
And I get into it about 4 words, and then the lights go on, and everybody cheers, and they throw a beer and say, "Congratulations, you're a part of the team."
Oh my gosh.
Okay, so
At that point, I wouldn't want to be part of the team.
Well,
I wanted
that's-
to get out.
But that's the part of the thing. It's a crucible.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, that's kind of out there. I don't recommend that for your hiring process.
Yeah.
But back to scenario, and keep that word in mind, because scenario is creating situations that reveal something else that you need to know.
Yeah.
And there's good ways of doing it. And again, that's hyperbolic. It's true what I told you, but it's like hopefully you never do that again. So think of now, and even as a team, if you can come up with scenarios, or 1 or 2, that really embody what you're looking for. So like integrity. and that's a tricky one to see right there.
Yeah.
And typically it's not going to show up in an interview.
Yeah, not right away.
Not right away. But it's a way of thinking about it. It's a process. So to summarize, you have the two models, the runway, which has got, its plus and minus. And most companies bigger ones tend to use that. Where they'll, and the thing that causes that is expedience.
Yeah.
It feels like it's faster. We just went through 5 candidates, and now we're down to the last one. And as opposed to saying, I think all 4 of them are right. So back to the team, create a scenario, and in this case, when you're in a hire thing, that usually has to do with talking about, have you ever played on a team? Having some questions like, what did you like about it? Yeah, I was in curling.
Okay.
I love curling. It's my life. I actually met a guy that's a curler. I'm thinking, kidding me? Anyway, have you ever seen that?
I've seen curling, yeah. It's a precise sport.
It is. So the idea, again, is to know, this is the goal, to know them as clearly as you can, given limitations. So, so moving from the runway to the portrait then can be an excellent, if it's appropriate. If you don't have to make it up. If you don't know anybody like that, but be slow to get rid of that one, because even if he's similar, she's similar to, Bob over there. Bob does this and this and this. That's what it reminds me of. Okay, well, what is it about Bob? Okay, then you can create this portrait.
Yeah.
So I'm going to stop there for just a second. Now, we've been talking about the hirer.
Yeah.
And not the hiree.
Not yet, right?
Not yet.
Yeah, we'll get into that.
So before we blow through that, what comes to mind there? As you know, you've gotten to know me a little bit. I tend to do the fire hose.
No, this is good. I think the profile is really interesting in that even if you're not using it, even if there's not that person internally that you can point to, it's still a great exercise to use for the runway.
Yeah,
it's like,
good.
Let me build something so that I can get an idea of who I should be looking at when I go to the runway. Because once you hit the runway, it's a lot.
Yeah.
In a very short period of time.
Yeah.
And so it's almost like you just get, it feels so similar. You stop even seeing differences. It's like it's all the same resume after you do like 20, 30, 40 resumes. And in today's day and age, I was just talking to someone in tech where there's like massive layoffs and it's very volatile industry. Recruiters in tech, specifically for the larger companies, they're dealing with hundreds, if not thousands of applications a day. It's like, how do you even do that? How do you do that? And so I think it's interesting to have like a very clear profile. Of course, will help make that runway process easier because you're matching each one to see how close they are to the profile.
Well, and it helps you in your goal, which is to know the person.
Yeah.
As opposed to just to pick the person.
Right.
Because that shows up later. Eventually, it's like they say about the emotions. There's no such thing as an unexpressed feeling. It's just a matter of when it gets expressed. And if you're not aware of it, then you can't really control it. And so if you use the analogy there of going into a swimming pool and there's a ball, and so you're given the ball and you got to keep it underwater. And so pretty doable. And then they throw you another ball, and now you got 2 of them there. And then a third, and you got your foot, and then a fourth, and then eventually it's going to show up.
Yeah.
Same thing when it comes to our feelings and our emotions. So ideally, the more that you can see those things rise up in a real time, it's not. I mean, everybody's got them.
Totally. Yeah.
You know, and so back to your insight, which is great, on the runway, you know, the two you use them together.
Yeah,
they're both tools.
Yeah. Yes.
That sometimes all you need is a hammer. Sometimes you need a hammer and a chisel. Sometimes just a chisel. But then not only do you need them, but you need to know how to use them.
Totally. Yeah.
So that's kind of, if you think about, so back to your thing with the big tech thing, and you've got thousands.
Yeah, of layoffs. And
I've never been involved on that level.
Yeah.
But I would say the same principles, but you'd have to adjust them, and you might have to divide and conquer, you know, to narrow. Say you have 1,000 things. Well, it's sort of the sifter.
Yeah.
You know, you only got 100 positions.
Yeah, right.
You can't hire 1,000 for 100. So how do you get it down? Well, it's going to be imperfect. But as you use whatever tool, to be aware of what are you using the tool for? So if it's getting it from 1,000 to 100, why are you doing that? And then, well, because we want to know people better, and we can't know them better. And some of it is just a matter of, in that case, just saying pragmatically, we can't do that.
Yeah, right.
We can't look at 1,000 people.
It's a huge lift.
And so where it shows up later in the hire, you know, maybe a year, maybe 2, maybe 5, and you can't. Again, it's not guaranteed on any of it.
Right.
And if you've been around it a while, and I know you have, and I promise you I have, I've made hires that I thought were great, and they were a disaster. And I'm just thinking, how did I miss that? Sometimes, you know, it's the human nature, the human thing, you know. Yeah. But being aware of what did I learn from that? What can I glean for the next guy?
Yeah. One of the things that I really love too, in terms of, right, you have your own experience of hiring, but it's so great, you know, to incorporate some of the team conversation, to involve other perspectives, other sides of just additional context. How are they seeing, you know, the candidate when they're in front of them, interviewing them or whatever? I think one of the cool things that we do with the organization that I'm with is, and I've never seen this done before, is you will interview essentially your boss, if that's the position that is being hired for, which is a really unique situation. And so as the person coming into that interview, it's not just your peers, and it's not just, you know, the CEO or the president, it's also the people you'll be leading. And they have such a unique perspective to help flesh out the profile, to get a fuller picture of the profile. So it's more efficient, because now you have more data to go off of at different levels, peer level, the boss, and the people who will be leading. And it creates a great, it creates definition really efficiently, which is really cool. I think one of the things I want to get more specific on is just the brass tacks, like identifying key characteristics. So you said integrity, and I agree that integrity would be one that's a sought after trait. It is hard to identify integrity. What are some other key characteristics? Oh, I guess let me back up real quick and say, I often feel like competency significantly overshadows character in hiring. The resume's competency, even personality things are often, like, in many ways performance driven. And so it's highly competent. You're looking at competency. The person showing up is trying to be as competent as they can. They're presenting competency. And then you said integrity. Well, that's character. And that's so much more difficult to identify. But super valuable to a great team member. What are some what are some characteristics like that that are super valuable to be cognizant of, and how in the world can we identify those?
Get it out. Yeah. I think it comes back in a sense to the scenario situation.
Yeah.
So, and you can do that in two ways. One is on the spot. So to just listen to someone talk about, tell me about XYZ. Tell me, and to even give a scenario. Bob comes into the office late every time, blah, 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 creating something where integrity would be important. And so, and again, it's not fail safe, but to your point, it's got some traction that helps you separate if this is good competency, et cetera. But then you go, did he really say that? And by the way, that can also pay attention to the whole room during this, because, so for example, somebody that might be good in the competency thing of competence is neutral. It depends on what you're competent about. You may be competent as a prize fighter, but not a very good chef.
Yeah.
You're very competent, but you're not. So that comes back to also knowing what you're looking for. Yeah. But when in the integrity part, so you have the scenario, that helps you see how, hopefully the integrity sort of reveals itself. And again, it doesn't mean they made a mistake, so he's out, but it kind of opens your eye. But then, as you kind of go through that process, the scenario, but also past performance. So refer to, it's like a scenario, but it's instead of now. Tell me about when you got fired from your last job.
Yeah.
Or tell me about your greatest fear when you boom. One of the guys I worked with who does that facet kind of professionally, and I was going through a kind of a career change at the time, so I went to this guy, and he had a bunch of different sort of words and situations. Like, for example, he'd say, as you see yourself, do you see yourself more as a Ferrari that's stuck in the garage, or a Volkswagen bus? And for me, that instantly was Ferrari stuck in the garage. Because I knew I had so much to offer, but it felt like due to there are those kinds of, and I could get you even the questions, but he had 100 questions. Not that he wouldn't ask all those, but he'd give you a menu to kind of go to ask.
Yeah.
But so like he would say, I remember these because he asked me, would you say that you lead more like a surgeon or like a quarterback?
Oh, interesting.
And so I'm thinking, I'm not either one. Right. But I could picture, it's hard for me. So the surgeon is very exact, very, is that you? Or is the quarterback needs to be able to do, so some of those kind of really well thought out questions can create a scenario that they respond to. So then also, with that same idea, you can refer to past experiences. So tell me about, and like, for example, this guy, it's fascinating. He wrote a book on it, but his whole thing is based on what you did in third grade.
Interesting.
And, you're thinking, but he would say, like, when you played on the playground, what did you do? Did you go out into right field and sulk? Did you, but and then things all around, like, did you have a lot of friends? in third grade, or did you have just a best friend? And then these kind of questions that really now you need to have kind of a teacher's guide there too, to say, was that a good thing or a bad thing? And none of it is ever about good or bad, but like when it comes to leadership, and it say, well, where are you in your family constellation? Are you firstborn, secondborn? And you can get, too technical, or you get above your pay grade.
Yeah.
But the idea is to think about questions, and the best way to think about them even is to ask yourself those things. What if someone asked me or you could say it another way, what would I reveal about myself that would really help that person know me?
Yeah.
Now that requires self-awareness. It requires confidence, and and a lot of people don't have that, so it doesn't mean they're. So you're really coming from a lot of different angles.
Yeah.
Now when you have a lot of people to go through, that seems overwhelming. But even at that, you can make the cut at the very beginning and just say, we have 4 candidates that seem like they're pretty close, and we got 10 more sitting out in the thing. And that, some of that's just external parameters. We don't have time to spend the whole year finding this guy.
Right.
Which I sense is a bit of the reality.
It takes a long time for us to hire the right people.
But, you also, I think you can't be overly protective about it, meaning being so afraid of making the wrong hire that you don't make any hires.
Yeah. Yes, because I think every time you take a risk, you learn. Whether it works out and you say, oh, that's the type of person we want to hire, or it doesn't work out and you're like, okay, I picked up on things that are flags for me to now keep in my memory when I'm doing this again, as like, all right. I don't want to be in that space again. We've had that, it didn't work out.
Yeah.
And so I think there is sometimes analysis paralysis with hiring, specifically when you have a lot of different options, and it's like, how do you know what's good? How do you know what the benchmark is? How do you know? So going back to the profile, I think something that we've wrestled with a lot is trying to put a pin on that, because I do think that's so valuable when you're able to really clearly identify, oh, this is like, this type of competency is really valued here. This type of character is really valued here. And if you could just list those things out, even that would be more than enough to help jumpstart a lot of those other conversations on the runway. Yeah. Because otherwise you're just shooting in the dark, just being like, I hope something sticks, and I hope I get somewhere.
Shotgun.
Yeah. Oh, totally. I want to go back to the team.
Okay.
Why do you see that as so valuable? Not just for the potentially the person potentially being hired on to see that dynamic, but also for the team itself experiencing the process of hiring together. How is that so valuable?
Well, I think it's ownership. That, and again, everything we talked about is precarious.
Sure.
It's not an exact science or anything, but there's principles.
Yeah.
But by including, some other people from the team in the process, and by the way, it's important to delineate from the beginning what this is and what kind of information we need from you as a team member.
Yes.
It's not just giving them a free-for-all.
Right.
Where you got some guy that just go, well, what do you think about the whatever?
Yeah.
And you're thinking, maybe that's going to reveal something, but think in terms, so in other words, to make the ground rules before you're in it, say, the 4 of us are going to interview this guy, and here's the kind of stuff that we need to both engage in personally, and that's a good check against but you don't want people projecting their stuff onto this person.
Yeah, right.
Well, I notice you have red hair. And does that ever got you in trouble, like with the law?
Right. Like, where's that coming from?
But so back to the thing of the why. Why would you do it that way? Some of it gives you just different perspective.
Totally.
And recognizing that every person is like a diamond with many facets. And depending on what you're going to use the diamond for, you want to look at at least a couple different sides.
Totally.
And one side may look great, but then you come around the other side and you think, whoa, what is that? Pikes Peak is an example for me. Living in Denver, if you see Pikes Peak from Denver, very recognizable. If you go down to Colorado Springs, Pikes Peak looks like any other mountain. And then if you go around the back to Woodland Park, and you're looking at the back of it, so part of that is just another set of eyes. Another set, but to define what we're looking for, not just what do you see, and so part of it is as the team itself creates its own sort of strategy. And that you talk about it. Bob, I know you're really good at knowing how quantum physics works. And one of the things in this laboratory that we're working on we all know is the impact of quarks in this process. So I have no idea to figure out if this guy actually knows about quantum theory. But Bob does. So Bob, could you, when it kind of comes to your side, or let's say Susie has got a great sensitivity towards how someone treats other people. So you kind of make some assignments. It's not just everybody take a shot at them.
I can't stress that enough. I think it's like you are wired to see certain things quickly and be blinded by other things. And so by relying on another team member's strength in seeing really quickly that thing that you might be blind to, it definitely helps paint a fuller picture.
Really, it's putting into practice where we're going by doing it where we're starting. So we're going to know this person, and we want to know this person because we want to know how they fit in a team. Well, then we dial it back and say, okay, we are a team. What does a team look like in this? Well, a team means that each person has got a function and has got a strength and a weakness. And so it can be, it's always a hit or miss thing for sure. And so you don't want to be stymied so you don't get into it. But just as you picked up on, when each person, and by the way, that's the thing in ownership in general, where it matters. What I think matters, not because I have the loudest voice or because of my position, exclusively. You define what we're looking for and what you're good at. And, as they say in some of these surveys about employee happiness, it says employees, the primary thing that they are happy about is when they're good at something. And a position, according to these studies that I've read, says ideally that the job you have, 80% of what you're doing, you're good at.
Interesting.
And you can think about it, it trumps pay, it trumps promotion, all this, say, well, I hate my job. Well, why? Did they not get enough money? No, I'm making double what I made before. But now they've got me on this computer. And so I go in every day and I don't know how to do it. And I'm confused by it.
Yeah.
And no one helps me with it. And I hate it. Well, how much of the day do you do that? Well, if it's 5 minutes, and I have to figure out how to get my key in the door.
Yeah.
Okay, well, that's one thing. Well, my job is to put keys indoors.
Yeah, all day long.
All day long.
Yeah.
Well,
Burnout right there.
in the same way, if you think about this hiring process as a team, if someone is able to use what they're good at, so you might have and here's another little add-on principle, knowing the difference, and this goes through all leadership as a leader, knowing the difference between an internal processor and an external processor. Internal processors, they need time. So if you want to know about this person and you want the internal processor, do the thing and then get back to them in a day.
Yeah.
Take what you saw there and think about it. And or like if you're doing a meeting, and this is part of the good meetings, bad meetings, but so if you know that the gal's an internal processor, you give them time. So we'll say, we're going to brainstorm today and we're going to do this and that. Well, the external processors almost always dominate because they process externally. What do you think about this idea? Well, I think, how about you? Well, you're an idiot. And so for the external processor, you need to have boundaries. But you need to let them know it's okay to process out loud. And sometimes the best way to do that is to talk about it. And so I would use that as a learning thing.
Sure.
How many of you think you're internal processing? How many external? What is it, Susie, as an internal, what does a meeting typically feel like to you? Well, it kind of depends on what we're doing. Well, let's say we're looking at adding a new wing on the building or something.
Yeah.
Well, here's how it usually looks. I am invisible. I might even say something, and it's like, okay, so, well, what's going on there? Well,
yeah, right.
Now, how about the external processor? We're going to do the building. What do you think? Say, well, I'll tell you what you think.
Yeah, right.
Here's what you do, and guess who gets rewarded in that? The external processor.
Yeah.
If you talk to the leader of the thing, they'll go, we had a great meeting today because we really talked the stuff through. Okay, how many people were there?
Right.
6. If you identify, and it doesn't mean to stereotype, but there is a sense in which we understand our type.
Yeah.
And everybody knows that, and we've talked about that, and back to the team. So now I know as an external processor, I need to use more restraint in a meeting so that I don't just dominate it. And if anything, I lead in asking Susie, what do you think? And that isn't, and you're not asking, what do you think? And you're looking at your watch.
Yeah, right.
But everything that we do has got the possibility of bringing energy. And so you picture these things we've talked about, hiring, being hiree, having a meeting, and so on. When people are interacting and when they're connected to each other, there's a saying in the Bible that says 1 can chase 1,000, 2 can chase 10,000. That doesn't work out mathematically, but it does in terms of reality. You get one person can do a lot. But when you have somebody else working with them, assuming, they're not killing each other, but there's power.
Right. Yeah.
And there's clarity. Yeah. And then that multiplies.
Yeah. I want to go to the other side and get more to the
hiree.
The hiree. I think that's where I want to end. Yeah. So if I can kind of recap just the leadership side, right? Because I think one other thing too, as you're talking about it too, it's like get comfortable hiring, because if you're in a growing business and you're in a leadership role, you're going to do a lot of that.
Yep.
It just comes with the territory.
Yep.
And so get really good at it. Find systems that work for you. Find tools that work for you. Find ways to involve the team that make it efficient. Challenge your questions, right? You're talking about, as you're talking about some of these questions, I'm like, those are great questions. And I look at my list and I'm like, I need to go back and redo some of my questions because it's such a valuable tool to like open up certain conversations and find certain things about an individual. But so for me, it was the profile is huge. Clarity around the profile is so important because that helps with the runway, and that also helps organize and operate your team the best way you possibly can to get the fullest picture when you're actually spending time with the candidate. And I think as you're doing that, I'm naturally wired to like find competence in somebody. And so I want to be really mindful of who can I put in the room. And I already have someone in my head, like, oh, they're so good at picking out like more character side, how they would operate as a team, their integrity, right? Do they care? Do they love the customer? What does that look like? Like put them in the seat to interview so that I can get that full picture. Moving to now being the person in the seat.
Yep.
It feels like it's a similar game in that like you show up trying to be your most competent self. But oftentimes it almost may work against you in that people do just want to know you as you, the character side, who you really are, right? Taking them out to go golf or play basketball. They like, there's a desire to know the human being behind the resume or whatever. And I think there's a lot of people that would actually probably benefit from what you're going to say because they are in a season of looking just because it's so tumultuous. It's like there's so much turmoil right now in this particular season with jobs everywhere, and the market is so saturated, hundreds of people applying for the same position in the course of 24 hours. It's like, it's crazy. There's so much of that going on. How do you stand out as an ideal team member, being the person that needs the role? Yeah.
Well, I think it's a similar, like you said, it's similar on both sides, but it's similar in this way. The potential candidate needs to interview the hirer.
Totally, yeah.
And typically, just the dynamic of it, you need to be a good listener. And a good listener is someone that listens to understand before they listen to respond. So just as a kind of on a technique side, and a technique can end up having a negative connotation because it feels mechanical. So take that aside. This is just technique, meaning the way that you do stuff.
Sure.
So one of the ways as a hiree is to ask questions genuinely that you're concerned about and you'd like to know of the people. Now, by the way, parenthetically, as you ask questions, you will learn a lot about them in the same way that they want to know about you.
Yeah.
Because how they respond to that, say they just write you off, or they're looking at their watch the whole time, or the body language is like, so how long have you been doing that, Bob?
Yeah, right. Totally disengaged.
Do you like a job like this?
Yeah.
So, but you're in charge of you. So when you come into that, and this is where Thoreau, I think it was, who said, above all else, be true to yourself. That you need to know yourself and to not back off or not just kiss up. And it's a fine line.
Sure.
I've heard guys give instruction, go in and basically tell them what they want to hear.
Yeah, right.
Well, in some hirers that might work, because they suck at it.
Yeah, totally.
But basically, if you, and this is where you have to be thinking long term on both sides, but as the hiree, saying, is this a group that I want to be a part of? I need a job and I need the income and I think I can do it, but it's the culture from the other side as much as you can discern. You're not going to discern it if you're not aware of it. So if you're not aware of the impact of culture, part of it is preparing yourself for yourself. This is before you go in there.
Yeah.
What really is important to me? Does what really matters to me?
Yeah.
And most people don't think that way. So you get in there, and all you're thinking about is they ask a question. I got to answer it really smooth or cool, and it's not the antithetical to that. If you answer smooth and cool, that it may be. But if that's who you are,
Yeah.
you know. So, like, people ask. My background, amongst many things, as we've talked about, was as a comedian and being a funny guy, and you know. So after 51 years of my wife being with me, people will ask, does she ever get tired of my jokes? And she answers accurately, no, I don't, because he doesn't tell jokes, which I don't. To me, humor is all spontaneous.
Yeah.
It's in the moment.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if you're trying to find out, you know, so if you're a hiree and you're thinking, I know these guys have a sense of humor so now I'm going to go over my head and I'm going to tell a joke. And it's inappropriate. And you're thinking, maybe that'll help. You know, so that isn't you. You know, be who you are.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you don't need to declare your interview of them.
What do you mean by that?
Meaning, well, I'm here to find out about you.
Like you flip the tables
yeah,
almost.
yeah,
Yeah.
right.
This is actually me interviewing you. Yeah. Right.
But in your own insides, you're saying, I wonder what they're like when people struggle in their new job. And then and it's you asking questions that help you understand them. But it's always preceded by don't usurp them, meaning the hiree taking over from David. All right, it's good to be here as a trainee or a hiree, and let's gather around here. And why don't you open in prayer, would you, Harry? You know, all right, now let's talk about me. Not likely to.
Yeah, it's not going to work out for you. Yeah.
But if you think about honoring each other on both sides, and this is a sub of the other side, that your interaction with the potential client, I believe, should inspire them to do better, not destroy them to do worse. And you got to recognize you're dealing with people. Same on the other side. These potential bosses, they're people. And if you want to connect with people, find out about them, take an interest in them. And if you don't have an interest in them, figure out how to have an interest in them.
Yeah.
So
totally.
I don't like XYZ personally. I'm going in there as a hiree. I don't go in there going, I hope this guy didn't ask about that because I don't like that. No, you say, how can I connect with that person? So let's just say I like golf, the hirer, and I'm the hiree, and I hate golf.
Yeah.
So how do we just ask, well, really, that's interesting. Well, what do you like about golf? How long have you been playing golf? Oh. And then he may go, yeah, you like golf? You know, I kind of don't. But let me tell you why.
Yeah.
My dad used to beat me with a 5-iron.
Got deep real quick in that
it
interview.
never really affected me much.
Yeah.
But there's this honoring the person on both sides.
Yeah.
It's powerful.
It is.
And people are looking for that.
I think absolutely. I think they're looking for authenticity. They're looking. They're like they want who they're talking to be actually who they're talking to.
And think about the exit interview of somebody that's just been interviewed. If you come around and say, how did the interview go? Well, I don't think I got the job, and I was frustrated because I didn't think I said something. But, well, how did you feel they treated you? Like crap? Or like, what? And it's not easily quantifiable, but what if it was this as a vision? You know, it's funny. I didn't get the job, I don't think, although it's in a process. But, I'd like to be a part of that team. That's what I saw there, and the way they treated me tells me a lot about that company.
No doubt.
And goes the other way around.
Absolutely, yeah.
And so there's a deeper, and rather than looking at a thing like hiring strictly from a pragmatic, which we need and with tools and so on, but people are longing to be known. When they come through that door, I mean, if you've ever been in that role, which most people have in some form, applying, and you're just nervous and, all these things going on, what if at the end of it, maybe you're not even as qualified as the other guy, but that person is looking for who you are.
Yeah.
And maybe it doesn't add up in terms of competency, et cetera, et cetera. By the way, another little parenthesis I meant to mention earlier, as far as competence, one of the things to look at in measuring it is outcomes, not just process. So you could say,
great.
you like guns? Yeah, I love to go to the range all the time. Are you a pretty good shooter? I think I am. Really? Do you have your targets with you?
Yeah.
I noticed that you kind of didn't hit any of them.
Right, yeah.
So what is it about the guns that you like?
Yeah.
So that's a different, and it doesn't mean you're out, but if you're thinking that when he says he's competent because he loves it and so on, that what is the outcome of that?
Right,
When you've done that in the past, what happened? So I'm the sales manager. And so have you ever sold anything? Yeah, I sold, a little bit. I'm just curious, how much? Well, do you ever watch Shark Tank?
Yeah.
Okay,
Love
those
Shark Tank.
If you want to get questions to stimulate you, watch Shark Tank.
Yeah.
Right, those guys.
They got some hard-hitting questions.
They do.
Oh, for sure. I think that's such a great call-out with the competency thing, because it can be easy to listen to someone, and resumes are great. They're chocked full of competency, but there's not a lot of outcomes.
It's a starting spot.
Yeah, it's such a great way to filter through questions. Like, am I asking questions of outcome rather than just being like, what did you do? How did you do it? Even that question is like, well, let me embellish this process for you. Didn't really do anything.
Right.
But it sounds really good.
As a result of what you did, what happened.
Exactly. Yeah, question of outcome is such a great way to measure competency. I want to end with just the reflection of authenticity.
Okay.
Because I feel like that's so often missed. I love that was, kind of reminiscent of what you were saying, in that someone's coming to the table wanting to be known. The people looking to hire genuinely want to feel like there is some level of trust being built through like two real people meeting. And I feel like that's kind of like a lost art in the commodity of hiring. It's like, let's get through people as quick as we can to get the right person in the seat to do the job. And we have very much missed this is a human that's nervous coming in, and they have a story and they have experience, and we're looking for a certain and it's like we miss almost the humanity of hiring. It's become robotic and engineered to a degree where everyone has the best, most efficient way to do it. And it's like, in the end of the day, you're right. Assuming you're good at your job, the next most important thing is, do you love the team that you're a part of? Do you love the people that you're working with? And that all comes down to, do I really know them? Is there an authenticity there? Which I think is just so valuable.
Well, our work is, I don't know what the percentage, but roughly 80% of our life.
Yeah, it's a lot.
And yet we devote very little time in looking at that 8 hours or that 8, whatever. We just do it.
Yeah.
And we don't recognize how it's either energizing us or sucking the life out of us. And because we're not aware of it, again, and as a company or as a entity that's hiring or being hired, the vision has got to be people, and not just, and it's not just people that you like. You treat people well I mean, as a Christian,
Yeah.
we treat others. It's the golden rule. And it's very simple, but we overlook it.
Yeah, absolutely.
How would you? And so I've talked to, in my own experience and other people, it's a corollary to this. But in firing, how do you fire?
Oh,
Much
that's
more
another,
complicated,
put
much
down the
more.
notes.
But
Yeah.
some of the same things that. How do you treat somebody?
Yeah.
How do you? And ideally, firing is a result of incompetence on the side of the management. But it's usually seen the other way around. So if you've got somebody you invested in as a new employee, and this is why this guy, Lencioni, in his book talks about onboarding, that he's in sync with the culture.
Yeah.
But then another piece of that is it's not just a meeting. Now I onboarded. Do you have any questions about what color uniforms you wear? Blah, blah. It's like 6 months later, we meet again, and then it's like with a couple of people. How's it going?
Yeah, totally.
Is it So it's the follow up as well. But on the firing side, theoretically, someone should, in a healthy situation, the firing should never be a surprise.
Sure.
Easy said, hard done.
Yep.
But these are things that's true. It is hard to do. But how do you get better at it?
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, you do it, and then you look at it. There's the cognitive side. You analyze it, and you go, oh yeah. But then you practice it. But transparency says, I blew that. And even with the team, what do we think happened there? We thought this guy was the number 1 draft pick, and he's just a jerk. Okay, well, how did that happen? Was he a jerk when he got here, or is he a jerk when he's leaving? A team, whether it's a company or a fellowship or whatever, ought to be about building each other.
Yeah.
In Ephesians, the New Testament says that as one man builds another by, and then steel sharpening steel. But when one builds another like ligaments in a body, that it's making it stronger.
Yeah,
That's
cool.
the vision.
Yeah.
You knowing me, ideally, would help you grow, not just be, for a lot of different reasons. But back to your thing of just running them through.
Yeah.
Man, we got to lean in on that, because in general, culturally, because as we're getting more and more aware of just the AI dimension.
Sure. Yeah.
It's a great tool for good and a great one for destruction. But if we're not spotting it, and we're, it's very seductive.
Yeah.
And so, but there's a lot of stuff that's that way. So just money can be, seductive. This is the highest paying job. I don't think I'm going to like it, but I'll do it. And then I'll be pissed the whole time.
Yeah,
that I didn't,
right.
So the process is organic. And what you're asking and what we're talking about, these are conversations I think that need to take place all the time. Yeah. Not just whether you're hiring or firing, but to not be afraid of it, but to not, in the E-Myth, the book E-Myth, talks about that, it's entrepreneurial, but that the entrepreneur tends to work in the business, but not on the business. Right. And that's true of all this. We can work at getting a candidate through here, and so we're working in it, but we're not working on it, stepping back and going, wow, what was that? Yeah. How do we get better at that?
Yes. Yeah, it's so good. It's a great call to action, and just how do you continually improve upon where you currently are. So thank you, Tom. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Andrew. You're a good man. I think. I'm not sure, but
we're working on that.
I have ways of finding out.
That's right. Yeah. You have sources.
Yes, I do.
Sources.
Thanks.